Welcome to an overview of Andragogy. My name is Lawan Netter, and this is a project for CED 505, Teaching Technology and Learning Theory. During this discussion, I will provide a working definition of andragogy. I will also share with you some characteristics of adult learners. Next, I'll compare traditional learning theory or pedagogy with the adult-centric andragogy model. And finally, I will share some information on self-directed learning. While this is a class project, it could be a useful talk for anyone tasked with educating adult learners. Andragogy was popularized in the U.S. by Malcolm Knowles. Knowles made some assumptions about adult learners that have been woven into the way we approach adult learning in many settings. I'm going to list the assumptions here, and then on the next few slides, I will talk about each principle. The first of these principles is adult learners need to know why their learning is important. The next principle is that adults already have a self-concept. Principle 3 is that adult learners come to the classroom with experience. The fourth principle is that adult learners are present because they want to learn. The fifth principle deals with adults being task or problem-centered in their orientation to learning. And lastly, while adult learners may respond to external motivators, internal priorities are more important. So principle 1, they need to know. Adults need to know why they need to learn something before undertaking it. An adult, when learning on their own, spends a large amount of energy and time trying to understand the value of new learning, either the benefit from learning or the consequence of not learning. The adult learner needs either to be told or, even better, to be led to discover why certain knowledge is worth learning. The second principle of andragogy states adults have a self-concept of being responsible for their own decisions, their own lives. Andragogy asserts that adults have a need to be self-directing. The third principle of andragogy is the role of the learner's experience. The learner's experience is a valuable resource in the classroom. The next principle is readiness to learn. Andragogy assumes that adults are living their lives while learning. The contexts of life demands lead adults to prioritize different learnings at different points. So a new manager might seek a class of effective management skills, or a pregnant couple might enroll in a new parents course. At any given point in life, adults are ready to learn those things they need to know and be able to do in order to cope effectively with their real-life situations. Orientation to learning. Andragogy proposes that adult learners are problem-centered in their approach to learning. Knowles emphasized the importance of orientation to learning by contrasting a reading program that was disconnected from life experiences and the powerful impact of the same program after the administrators connected them to the learner's context. The next one is motivation of adult learners. Stickers, gold stars, and instructor praise aren't effective motivators for adult learners. While the rewards, like the ones mentioned, might hold some appeal, stronger motivators for adults engaged in learning are more intrinsic in nature. There are also barriers to motivation. Many adults are actively involved in life and have many responsibilities that they must balance against the demands of learning. These principles laid out by Malcolm Knowles have been woven into many learning strategies employed in adult education and are quite different than the traditional pedagogy methodology used in a K through 12 setting. I thought it would be useful to compare the two methodologies. Here is a graphic representation of pedagogy. Notice the one-way dissemination of information. In this type of design, the instructor's experience is most influential. And here is a representation of andragogy. Notice how there is a transfer not only from instructor to learner, but from learner to instructor, as well as learner to learner. In this model, Each person's experience is valued and adds to the synergistic learning environment. The first area we'll compare between the two methodologies is preparing learners. In a pedagogy model, students are not involved in choosing what should be learned. This is left to the hands of the instructor, who decides what should be learned, how and when it should be learned, and whether it's been mastered by the learner. In an andragogy environment, learners have to help diagnose their own learning needs. Some kind of model of competency is required for the learner to be able to spot gaps they need to fill. The role of the instructor facilitator is to help learners develop realistic expectations. The next area we'll compare is classroom climate. A classroom designed on a pedagogy model has the teacher as the authority. The classroom environment is formal and competitive. A classroom designed on andragogy is a collaborative environment where the learner's experiences are valued. The hierarchy is gone, and each person is respected and valued as an individual. It is a more informal environment that exudes warmth and trust. The next area we'll compare is planning. In a pedagogy modeled class, the teacher prepares the lessons. And as we've already touched on, in an andragogy modeled class, plans are individualized based on learner experience. The next area of comparison is diagnosis of needs. In a pedagogy model, the teacher or school administrator determines the needs of the students, while in an andragogy model, these needs are assessed in tandem with the learner. The designing of learning plans differs between the two models. In pedagogy, content is divided in subject-specific units. In an andragogy model, content is sequenced by readiness and are problem task-oriented in nature. Learning activities tend to focus on memorization in pedagogy, whereas andragogy uses experiential techniques that are problem-focused and tied to real-life experience. Finally, when comparing evaluation methods between the two models, you'll see that learning is evaluated by the teacher in pedagogy, and in andragogy, it is a more mutual process between learner and instructor. At the time, Knowles's approach and assumptions were revolutionary and led the way to separate specialization of adult learning. His work is also heavily cited in new theories like heutagogy, used to design e-learning environments. What are the big takeaways from Knowles's work? There are four big takeaways. Adults need to be involved in the planning and evaluation of their instruction. For adults, experience, including mistakes, provide the basis for learning. Make it relevant. Adults are most interested in learning subjects that have immediate relevance and impact to their job and/or personal life. And lastly, adult learning should be problem-centered as opposed to content-oriented. The final topic for this project is self-directed learning, which is another foundational theory to adult learning. In many ways, the theories are complementary. Knowles believed that adults become more self-directed as they mature. It is important to note that in the beginning, not everyone can be a successful self-directed learner. Models have been developed to help with assessing where a learner currently resides on the spectrum. The best-known model is called the Staged Self-Directed Learning Model, which is an easy-to-use matrix that allows learners to locate themselves in terms of their readiness and comfort with being self-directed, and it also allows instructors to match the learner's stage with an appropriate instructional strategy. As the stages progress, students become more self-directed, whereas the teacher has less control over the learning. There are three goals in self-directed learning: the development of the learner's capacity to be self-directed, the fostering of transformational learning. And finally, the promotion of emancipatory learning and social action. This concludes the presentation. You were provided with a working definition of andragogy. You were also familiarized with the characteristics of adult learners. You learned some differences between andragogy and pedagogy. And finally, I shared some information on self-directed learning. Thank you for your time and attention.